If you love Brickstitch, you're going to want to see this honeycomb and beaded bee come together. In this tutorial, we're using Delica Beads to Brickstitch a honeycomb, bead a tiny bee, and stack them together to make an adorable dimensional earring design. I also made a downloadable pattern to go with it. And there's a big discount code in this video if you would like to grab it. We're going to start first by making the little bee portion of our earring. So with this, I'm going to show you how to use the diagram of the picture of the bee and then use that to be able to brick stitch your bee together. We're going to start off down here, actually down here in the bottom. So this row right here. So this would be kind of basically row 1, 2, and 3. Now if you're looking at the worded portion of the pattern is actually going to start up here. So that's going to be a little bit different than actually doing everything down here at the bottom. I just feel like it's a little bit easier to start down here at the bottom. We're going to work our way up to the top, and then we're just going to leave a little bit down here as far as thread is concerned down here at the bottom so we can finish it off. And then I'm going to show you how to start this one off using ladder stitch, but then the other half we're going to do something different. Alright, so this first one we're going to do ladder stitch, so we need to have 2 of our black beads on there. I've got my black ones, my white ones, and my gold ones sitting here out of the kit. So bring those 2 black ones down to the end of the thread. Now like I said, you're going to want to leave a little bit left over. So I'm using my watch as a guide, and I'm going to leave probably, what is that, about 5 inches, maybe 6 inches or so. That's plenty to be able to go back and add those extra beads at the end. Now to do ladder stitch, we have the 2 beads on there. We want to go back through the first bead in the same direction that the thread is going in right now. So like that. When you pull this tight, that should stick your 2 Delicas sitting right next to each other. Now we need to get over here out of the Delica on the right hand side so we can add the next Delica, because this row has 3 Delicas in it. So go ahead and go from the top to the bottom on that right hand Delica. And then go ahead and pick up your next black bead, and then we're going to wrap around this Delica. So go from the top to the bottom again in the same direction that the thread is going in. And then that should put your 3rd Delica sitting right next to the 2nd one. Now we need to get to where we can start doing our brick stitch. To do that, we need to be coming out of this last Delica over here. So go ahead and go from the bottom to the top of the black one. And then that gets us set up to where we can start doing brick stitch on the next row. So this next row we're going to be adding a black, 2 gold, and a black. Whenever you start off your brick stitch, you always start off with 2 beads. At least that's what I do. Some people do it a little bit different, but I always start off with 2 beads. So I have a black and a gold. For brick stitch, you put your beads on your thread and needle. Then you need to get your needle up under the bridge thread that is in between those first 2 beads. So you need to go like that. And see how the needle is coming coming out in between the 2 beads right there. So just make sure you're up underneath the bridge thread. And this is going to be loose, and that's pretty typical. It will get tighter here in just a minute. And then you just use your fingers and you pull down on your thread until everything kind of sits in the correct way. Now there may be a better way of doing this, but that's okay. See how mine's kind of wonky right now? We're not done with the stitch yet, so we need to go back up through the gold bead. I just wanted to make sure that the 2 beads were close enough down to the product that they're not going to flop around too much. And then when you pull that tight and you go back through that last bead, then your beads, once they behave, are going to sit next to each other. And if I can get this last one to behave. See how I just put the needle through that last bead? Sometimes you have to do that just to get it to sit right. And then when you pull tight, your beads should sit something similar to that. Now it still is a little wonky. You can tell that this that first row that we did is kind of back and forth like that. It's going to fix itself. Just pick up your next bead, which is going to be the gold bead. Then we need to go to that next bridge thread. So in between the first two beads that we added in the very beginning, go underneath the bridge thread, pull that bead down to the product, and then go back through the bead from the bottom to the top, like that. And then this one is going to sit a little bit better, and see how it got everything to kind of sit a whole lot better now. So usually that first set of beads when you first start is going to be a little wonky. It will correct itself. And the last bead on this one is going to be the black bead. Now this is how you're going to do an increase on the inside, the end portion of it. You have no more bridge threads to go underneath over here off to the left. So what you're going to do is go back through that same bridge thread that you just went through with the last bead. So in between the first two beads from that first row. And then when you pull down on this, it should sit that bead off to the left. It's kind of towards the back a little bit, but it'll be somewhat off to the left. Then you just complete your stitch like you normally do by going up through that bead. And, well, alright, so you complete that stitch by going up through that bead. And then when you get that pulled down, that should make everything sit like that. Now we're going to flip this in our hands. I like to bead when I do brick stitch. I like to go from right to left. So if you can actually brick stitch and go from left to right and then continue on back and forth like that, then that's perfectly fine too. This particular pattern is the same on both sides, so there is a center to it, and so it's the same on the left and same on the right. So whatever is more comfortable for you. Now in this row we're going to add 5 of our black beads. So we're going to do an increase on this row. So to do an increase, we're going to pick up 2 of our beads, go underneath that first bridge thread, and then pull that down, and then go back up that last bead that we added. So there's the first 2. Then we're going to add bead number 3. Go through the next bridge thread that's in line, so it's the one in between the 2 gold beads. I keep getting wrapped around stuff. And then we're going to go back up through that one. And then we're going to add bead number 4. Go through that last bridge thread, so the one in between the black and the gold. Go up through that one, and we still have to add our last bead because this is still an increase to the left hand side of the bee. So we need to have one more bead on there. To do our increase again, we're going to pick up one of our black beads. We're going to go through that same bridge thread that we just went through on the last time, so in between the black and the gold. Just make sure you're underneath the bridge thread and not in between beads, like in between this bead and the thread. You want to make sure that you're underneath the bridge thread that's down here. And then continue. Man, I'm having problems with this today. Why? I don't know. Probably because I'm recording. And then we're going to continue and pull that. And then when you get that pulled and tighter up against the project, then it'll look something similar to that. So that's how you do increase in rows. So then the next row you're going to have a black, 4 gold, and a black. And then after you put that row on, so you're going to put a black and a gold first, and then you're going to have the 3 extra golds, and then we're going to end with a black again. Once you get that row on, I'll meet you back and I will show you how to do an increase that's more than 1 bead, to get us set up to where we can put the wings on our bead. So now I'm going to show you how we're going to increase by more than one bead in a row. So we just got done with this row right here where it's the black, the 4 gold, and the black. Well, as you can see, there's more over here to where we can add the wing, more than just one bead. So this would be a 1 bead increase, it would be this bead right here. But we need to add 2 more beads on the right hand side of that bead also. So this is how you do that. I'm coming out of the black bead, just like typical, just like we've been doing. So I'm coming out of that black bead. I'm going to go ahead and add 2 as if I were starting a normal brick stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and just increase it by 1 at the moment. So add our 2 beads, go underneath the bridge thread, complete your stitch by going up that last bead. And then that has the first 2 beads on. But as you remember, we still need to have 2 more beads off to the right over here. So now we're going to have to do ladder stitch again. So to get over here to the right, we need to go to the right 1 bead and go down through that bead. Then we're going to pick up one of our black beads and we're going to ladder stitch on this bead. So go round through that last bead that's on the bee itself. Go from the top to the bottom. And we still need to add 1 more bead out here. 1 more black one. So go ahead and go back through that one that's on the right now. It's the newer bead from the bottom to the top. And then we need to ladder stitch on 1 more bead. So do the same thing. So just go from the bottom to the top. Now, we don't have any more beads that we have to add out here off to the right. We're actually done now because we have our increase right here, and then those are the 2 extra beads that we needed to add. So now we need to be coming back out of this last bead again, going towards the top of that bead. To do that, we're just going to move through our beads again. So go to the left 1 bead from the bottom, or from the top to the bottom. And then we're going to go straight through the bead on the left, which is the bead that we need to be coming out of from the bottom to the top. Just like that. And then when you get that done, that hides the thread in between the 2 rows of the beads, so you can't see the thread anymore. So now we just need to add the extra beads until we get down to the other end. Then we're going to have to do something similar. So we're going to add extra black beads. Like this. And then I'm just doing this quickly now, so that way it's not too much of emptiness in between the stitches. Hopefully some of this is in focus. So we're going to add this bead, and then we're going to add the last bead like we've been doing for an increase at the end of the row. So we're going to add the last one again. Go back underneath that bridge thread from the last bridge thread that you went. Make sure it's the bridge thread and you're not just in between the bead. Oh, I got 2 beads on the thread. Hold on. I only need 1, not 2. Alright, go back through that last bridge thread. There we go. Now I'm underneath the bridge thread. I was just in between the bead. I want to make sure this sits right. So now we're underneath the bridge thread, and then go back up through this bead to finish the stitch. And then that puts our 1 extra bead on the left hand side over here. There we go. It'll sit right here in a second. So now we need to add the 2 extra beads again. So now we're just going to do ladder stitch on this side. So pick up a bead. You're already coming out of the top hand side of the bead that's on our work. Then we're going to go from the bottom to the top, so we're just wrapping it around. And then when you pull tight, it should look like that. We still need to add 1 more bead out here. So we're going to go back through from the bottom to the top. No, from the top to the bottom, sorry. So that way your thread is coming out at the bottom of that bead. And then we're going to add another bead onto our needle, and then we're going to follow the same thread path again. So go from the top to the bottom through this last one. And then that gets you set up to where you have the 2 extra beads on the end. Now we need to get set up to where we can do our next row. To do that, we're going to actually go through this last bead, whereas over here we didn't. We just wove back through the beads until we got to where we needed. Over here we need to get set up to do the next row. So go ahead and continue through that last bead. And there again, if it looks a little wonky because of the ladder stitch, it'll correct itself here soon. So now we're going to switch it, and this little portion is going to be a black, 2 white, 2 black, 2 gold, 2 black, 2 white, and a black. So this row is going to be the same way. We're going to increase like we've been doing. So put a black and a white on. So we're going to increase by 1. Go underneath your bridge thread that you just made. And then complete the stitch by going up the white bead. And then when you pull it down to your product, see how that last one kind of went wonky again. So all I'm doing is I'm finding the top of the bead and putting my needle through it like this. See how the bead is sitting off to the side like that? I just put my needle through it. Don't complete the stitch, just put your needle through it and then tug on your working thread and hold on to it, and then eventually it'll get itself to sit right. Still kind of wonky. There again, it's going to correct itself, I promise. So we're going to pick up another white bead. I'll show you how to correct it again, or how it will correct itself. And then go underneath the next bridge thread. Pull that tight. Complete the stitch by going up the white bead. And then when you pull this down, it is now corrected itself. Just like that. So we're going to put one more bead on, and then I'll let you complete this portion of it, and then I'll come back and I'll show you the next little part, because we're going to end up finishing the wing. Then we're going to come back and do the head of the bee, and then we're going to do the last wing. So there. So once you get that one on there, then it starts to look a little bit better. There again, we're going to have another row up on top of here, so these beads are going to look better here in a minute also. So go ahead and complete this row, and then make sure you end up with a extra bead out off to the side, because we're doing an increase on the end of this row as well. And then I will show you the next part. Alright, so on this row, this is the row that we just completed right here. So we're on this one black bead right here. This row we actually need to do a decrease. So I'm going to show you how to do that real quick. Now there's different ways that you can do decreases. This is how I just prefer to do it, because you don't see any thread paths this way. So we're coming out of that last black bead. We need to be actually coming out of this white bead, the first white bead that's sitting here, going in this direction. So this is how we get our thread turned around to do that. Coming out of the black bead, we need to go from the top to the bottom through the white bead to the left. Then we're going to go one row down at a diagonal. So we're going to go from top to bottom of the black bead, the one row down. Now we're going to change our thread. We're going to go from the bottom to the top of the right bead, the bead to the right. And then we can go through the white bead from the bottom to the top of where we need to be coming out of. So that's how I prefer to do my turnarounds, or my decreases. And that just keeps the thread from actually showing. You can actually just have a little small bridge thread out here to the side. Most of the time people aren't going to see it and aren't going to even know what's going on. I just prefer to do it this way. So we're going to do our typical start off. So start off with 2 beads. So we're picking up a black and a white. Then we're going to do our normal little brick stitch. Now, like I said in the last clip, we're going to do just the wing portion of this, and then I'll get you set up to where you can do the head of the bee. And then I'll get you set up again to be able to finish off the last portion of the wing. So this last bead that we're adding on this part is just one black bead. So we're only adding 3 beads on this little section of the wing. And the reason for that is that there's a space in between this wing and then the head is over here. So there's a space right here. Whoops, you can't see that. So there's a space right here in between the wing and then the head will start over here. So there's going to be a space right here. So there again, this is where how you can maneuver around your brick stitch in order to not have any thread paths showing. So now we're there. I'm going to go ahead and flip this there again, so I'm going from right to left. That's just how I prefer to do my brick stitch. So we're still working on that same wing. We now need to do another decrease. So we're going to go back through the white bead to the left of where the thread is coming out of in the current row. We're going to go through the white bead in the row below that is on the left. And there's a couple of thread paths already through it, so just take your time trying to get through it. Wiggle your needle if you need to. And then we're going to go up through the bead on the right from the bottom to the top. And I don't know why my needle's not wanting to work today. There we go. I think I keep hitting the edge of the bead because I don't have this close enough to my head. And then we're going to come out the bead that we need to be coming out of, which is the white bead in that current row. So we just did another decrease. And then got our thread set up to where we can, we got our thread set up to where we can do a decrease. So now we're coming out of that middle bead. And then this row is just 2 black beads. So this row is actually pretty simple. Pick up 2 black beads and then go to the bridge thread that's off to the left of where your thread is coming out of. And then just don't forget to complete the stitch. And then when you do that, that puts your little edge of your wing onto your bee. So now we need to get moved over here to where we can start the head of the bee. Flipping it back in my hands again. So now everything is back off to the right hand side. We need to be coming out of, let me see, yep. We need to be coming out of this bead right here, the first gold bead. So to do that, we're going to have to think about, okay, how are we going to move our thread to where we can come out of here? So we can go down to the left 1 bead in this direction. We can go down 1 row to the left, 1 bead. I think we have to change it up after this. And then you have to kind of think, okay, if I go down this bead, then I'm going to be going up this next bead. I can get that a little bit closer so you can see that. If I go down the next row to the left, then we're going to be going down that bead. Then we're going to be coming up this bead, and then we're going to be going down that bead, but we need to be going in the opposite direction. So to get it in the correct way, we can now go down the bead that's on the right, which is that white bead. There again, a couple of thread paths through these beads, so just take your time getting through that white bead. So that was the bead on the row below, but on the right of the black bead that we were at. So now we're coming out of the white bead, and we're going to go up the bead to the left, which is the first black bead. And then we're going to go down the bead to the left of that one, which is the next black bead. And then we're going to go up the bead to the left, which is the first gold one, and that's where we need to start the head portion. Now the head is the same thing. It's just increases and decreases again. So the first little section, you always want to start off with the 2 beads again. So pick up your 2, go through the next bridge thread, and then complete your stitch. And then pick up your last one, next one in this little part, and then go through the next bridge thread. So this first little row of the head, you're just adding the 3 beads. The next row is going to be 4 beads, so you're going to do an increase. So I just flipped my bee in my hands again. So you're going to do an increase of 4 beads. Then you're going to do a decrease of 3 beads, and then a decrease of just the 2 beads on the top. So go ahead and complete the little head portion, because it's the same thing where you increase and decrease, and then meet me back and I'll show you how to move the thread back over here to finish off the wing on this side. Alright, so now we have the head of the bee completed, and now we need to get our thread and needle moved over to where we're coming out of this first white bead of the wing over here on the left hand side. And my cat Cosmo is very upset that I had the door closed, so that's the meowing that you hear in the background. Alright, to do that we're going to go down the bead on the left, and we're just going to basically follow the outer beads here on this portion. So go down the second row, bead on the left. She's very mad at me right now. And then we're going to go down the third row. And as you can see, the fourth row is that first row that we started when we did the head portion of this. So it's actually on the right hand side. So go down the bead on the right, because there is no bead on the left. And then this is where it's going to vary a little bit. So we're coming out of that bead right here. So that was actually the first bead that we added, or the last bead that we added in the head portion on the first row. Now we need to be going upwards out of this first white bead. So to do that, we're going to have to go down the gold bead over here off to the right. So down the gold on the right, up the black on the left, down the black on the left of that one, and then up the white. And then that will get you set up to where you can start your next wing. And if you want to change this up any, if you want to add more wings to your bee, you can always do that. I got my bee flipped around, got confused there for a second. You can always add more wings to it. You can, if you're familiar with Brickstitch, you can actually do another little bead right in here and then do another wing on top of this one to make it a little bit more lifelike. I just decided to keep it a little bit more simple and just do the one set of wings. That way, if somebody's a little bit more newer at this, then they can just do the one set of wings. But if you're familiar with it, play around with it. Make your bee as lifelike as you want. I do have one bee that I had started to do where I started to try to figure out if I could do little antenna, and it kind of sort of worked, but I didn't like the way that it came out. So that's one option you can do, is put some antenna there at the top of the head as well. So something else to do if you would like. And then I should be coming out of the correct bead now, the white one, going up towards the top. And then that's where you would start your next little section. So the next section is going to be those 3 beads, so you'd pick up your black and your white, and then start your Brickstitch like you normally do. And then finish out that wing. So once you get done with the wing, I will show you how to tie off this portion of the thread, because this part we're done with. And then after that, we'll come back and we'll finish off the little end, the tail end of your bee. So go ahead and finish your wing. I'll come back, show you how to tie it off, and we'll finish that tail wing, or tail portion of the bee. So now your bee should look something similar to this now that you have your second wing done. So now we're done with this portion of the thread, so we need to tie it off. I usually try to get down into these white beads right here and get it tied off down there. We're not actually going to tie a knot at all. We're just going to move our thread around a couple of times, change the direction of it, so that way it has a harder time for it to fall out. So we're going to go, I'm coming out of that left bead of that wing, so the left black bead there. So I'm going to go down the right bead on that same row. I'm going to go ahead and go down the white bead that is to the left in the row below. And like I said, there's a lot of thread through some of these white beads, so sometimes this will work, sometimes you'll have to go down into the gold and black portions down here to kind of help hide your thread. But what I'm trying to do is get through this white bead and then change my direction of my thread and then burn it off after that. Alright, so it's kind of stuck. So if you ever run into, even, it doesn't even have to be Brickstitch, if you're ever beading and it feels like your needle is stuck, then you can always grab a pliers of some sort. I would hold on to the beadwork in between your fingers, so pinch it in between your fingers, just not too tight. Then we're going to use the pliers to wiggle and tug at the same time, and then that should bring your thread and needle through. But that also kind of tells you that you probably don't have that many more thread paths through that bead before it'll break. So just be careful doing that. So I'm going to go to the left, one row down, in that next white bead, and then this is where I'm going to turn my thread around. I'm going to go up that same row through the white bead right here. On a lot of different Brickstitch projects, I try to turn my thread 2 or 3 times and then tie off, but on this little itty bitty small thing, I'm just going to turn it just the once and then be done. This is where this will differ also. You can use scissors. If you have some really sharp scissors, go ahead and just cut it down close to the product itself. I usually still like to use my thread burner. Now this one, of course I know you can't see it because it's really far away. Now this one, I try to leave as little of a piece of thread as you can there at the bottom, close to the product, and then we're still going to create a little ball of thread like we would on other thread woven projects. And then when you get it down close to where the white is, that's why I was trying to do it at the white side, so you really can't tell that there's a piece of thread sitting there. And then that little ball helps to keep the thread from going back through the bead as well. So now all you have to do, put your needle on the end of your starter thread down here, meet me back, and I'll show you how to finish off our cute little bead. Alright, so now I have the needle on the beginning thread that we left there at the beginning, and I've got my bead turned upside down. So we need to do one more decrease because this row is only going to have 2 beads on it. And it's slightly different to add that last row, so that's why I'm recording this rather than just letting you do it, just in case, like I said before, if you're new at this. So all I'm doing right now is just moving the thread around to where I'm coming out of that second black bead, or the middle of them. And then once I get my thread turned around, then we'll add our 2 black beads, and then I'll show you the difference, which is pretty simple. Come on, go up through that middle bead. Alright, so we're coming out of the middle bead, or the second bead, and then we're going to add our 2, so that way we have a decrease on both the beginning and the end of this row. Go through the next bridge thread just like we've been doing. Knowing how to increase and decrease like this is going to help out a lot in the honeycomb portion of the earring, because most of that earring I'm going to let you do on your own. So if you need to, you can always rewind and figure out if you need some help again on how to do an increase and a decrease on each row. So now we just have to add 1 single bead. So pick up your 1 little bead, which will be the stinger. So you can always change this up too if you want to turn this into a gold stinger or something like that. You can do that too. But I'm going to pick up just the 1 bead coming out of, and I'm actually beading in the opposite direction that I have been, but there's a reason for that. So I'm coming out of the left-hand bead on the last row. I'm going to go straight down the bead on the right, and then that puts the bead sitting like that, and it makes it look more like a stinger. Alright, so now all we have to do is just tie off this thread. So this I'm going to actually move on down at a diagonal through these until I get to those gold beads, the row of the 2 gold beads. And then that's where I'm going to turn my thread around there. There again, you're probably not going to notice any thread pass because we're going to a gold bead and not a white bead. You're probably not going to notice that there's some thread, a ball of thread sitting there. If that's something that does bother you, go ahead and move yourself all the way over to the other side where we did, because we did the tie off over here on this wing, so you can move your thread all the way over to this wing if you wanted to and do your tie off right there. I'm just going to leave it like this. So this, I'm actually turning my beads around twice. So I have enough room in those 2 gold beads to where I could do that thread pathwise. And then just do the same thing. Do a very, very small amount. And then after that, just use your thread burner and create a little ball of thread. And then now your bee is complete. So there's your cute little guy. Alrighty, so meet me back and I will show you how to start the honeycomb pattern. And then we're going to start this off different. We're not going to do a ladder stitch, we're actually going to do a peyote stitch. So meet me back in a second and I'll show you how to start it. Here's the special discount code you can use to get your pattern 75% off in my Etsy shop. If you'd rather purchase it normally, thank you. Every bit of support goes right back into helping me create more videos, designs, and fun projects for you. So let's get started on the honeycomb. So the honeycomb, we're actually going to start by doing a 2-row peyote stitch down the longest row of the pattern itself. So the bottom row of the peyote stitch is going to be this longest row right here, which is where our wire guard is attached to. And then the second row is going to be the row just above it with the way that I'm holding it right now. So that's what we're going to start off with. So what you'll need to do is we're going to start off over here off to this side. So we're going to pick up 2 A's. And I have all my beads laid out, where I have A, B, C, D, and E. And then we're going to pick up 1 B. So 2 A's and 1 B. Now when you pull your thread down on, or you're pulling your beads down on your thread, you're going to want to leave about 2/3 of your thread as your tail. Because we're going to come back and we're just going to put the needle on the back end over here, kind of similar to what we did with the B, and then we're going to finish out our earring in that way. So I'm going about 1/3 way down or so, because we're going to end up using more thread on the back end than we are on the front end. So to start our peyote stitch, we've got the 3 beads on there, we've got the 2 A's, and then we got the B. We're going to go back through just that 1 A, whoops, in the wrong direction, in this direction, just like that. Come on, focus, there we go. So we're going to go back through that first A in the opposite direction of where the thread is going in right now. And then when you pull those down, it should sit your beads like this. Now if you look at the pattern, and you can't see that, it should sit your beads like that. Now if you look at the pattern actually shows that these beads are in, I'll get it right here in a second, this fashion. Cosmo. It's not in that fashion. Okay, what did I do? This way. Okay, I'm trying to figure out what my cat's doing at the same time. Sorry. I went ahead and let her in the room, and I think that was a mistake. Alright, so I want to get my beads switched around in the correct way. So I have the 2 A's. See if I can get it to focus again. I have the 2 A's on the left. And then I have the 1 B there on the right hand side. So that's how you want it to be sitting. So I'm going to have to pinch it because it's kind of twisting in my hands. I probably have the thread twisted because I moved it around so many times. Yeah, now you hear the bird at the window, huh? Alright, so our next bead that we're going to add is going to be a B. So B as in boy. And then we're going to go from this bead here. We're going to go straight into the sticky outy bead right there. So we're going into the bee bead. So now your pattern should look like that. Now we're going to add a bead, and go through the bead that's sticking out again. So this is your two-step peyote. And I'm looking at my pattern. I got 2 more bee beads to add. So bees and boy again. There we go, focus. And then we're going to go through the sticky outy bead. Come on now, focus, focus, focus. There we go. Okay, I had to play with the focusing on the camera in order to get it to work right. And of course I'm still getting stuck up along the edge of everything. So then there is the next bead. We're going to add another bee bead. We're going to go through the one that's sticking out. So now you look like that. And I'm doing this slower just in case this is confusing to somebody. Then we're going to pick up a C, C's in cat, which mine is sitting in my window right next to my computer right now. Hopefully she doesn't go nuts because there's a bird out there making noise. And then after that we're going to add 4 bees, one at a time though. So we're going to pick up a bee. I have way too many things on my mat. That's why this thing is just going nuts. In fact, I think I'll move that out of the way. That might help. So there is number 1. And then 2. And then 3. And then 4. I'll show you how that looks in a second. So there you go. So that's what it should look like at the moment. So now we're going to add 2 A's, one at a time again. So an A, and then your second A, so there we go. There's 2 A's. Then we're going to add a, what is that, an E and an A twice each time again. No, that's a D. D as in David and an A. So pick up a D as in David and then an A, and then do that one more time. Another D, and an A. And then there's that little section. Now we're going to pick up a, where am I at? Right there, right there. So we're going to pick up, actually another one. So we're going to pick up 3 of these. I lost my place on there. So we're going to pick up another D and another A. And my stomach is growling like crazy. Yes, it is lunchtime. I need to eat. So then now we have 3 of our D's sitting there with A's underneath it. Alright, now it changes up a little bit. So now we're going to pick up an A. And then we're going to pick up 4 of our B's again. So B as in boy. So there's 1. And 2. 3. And then 4. Now we're going to pick up a C as in cat. Oh, I forgot to show you, sorry. There's that. Now we're picking up a C as in cat, put that down. And then that puts that in your peyote stitch. Then we're picking up 4 B's again, so B's and boy. And each time we pick one up, we're only picking up one at a time. The only time we picked up more than one is at the very beginning when we picked up those 3 beads. Every other time that we're doing the peyote stitch here, we're just doing it one at a time. And then when we get back to the brick stitch again, it'll be the same thing where you pick up 2 at the very beginning and then 1 each time. So yes, you are adding one bead at a time, but the result is pretty awesome. So there's your 4 B's. Now we're going to pick up 2 A's. So here's A number 1, then A number 2. So there is that. It's kind of focused. It's a little out of focus every once in a while. Then we're going to pick up a D as in David plus an A 3 times. So a total of 6 beads are going to go on. So D as in David, and an A. Do that combo 2 more times. Now she's winning out of the room. See, I knew that would happen. Cosmo would just be like, okay, I'm indecisive. Maybe I want to stay in here, maybe I don't. Bird flew off, so now I'm not interested anymore. And I'm getting my beads mixed up. Okay, you go over there. I need an A, so we're going to get an A that moved over to the B pile. Cosmo, give me a minute, kitty cat, and I'll let you out. So there's that. Then we're going to add another A. And then we add 2 of our D's, D's and David. And then I'll show you what it looks like after that, because I know some of this is not staying in focus. So 2 D's and Davids. Now we're going to add 2 of our E's. So E is an elephant. Or what's the right word? I think echo is actually the right word. I don't know that alphabet, unfortunately. And now we're going to pick up a C, as in cat. So there's the C. Then we're going to pick up 2 of our E's, as in elephant, again. And we're almost to the edge now, the other edge. So there's that. And then 2 of our D's, as in David. And then our last 2 beads, which are A as in apple. It's an A. Alright, so that is your first row of your peyote stitch. And that was a lot quicker than having to do just a ladder stitch with 1 row and then come back and actually do a brick stitch on top of it. So doing this in peyote stitch actually helps out a lot. So I thank you, Miss Danielle, for coming up with that idea and or teaching it. I learned that from Danielle Wicks, watching some of her videos on her peyote stitch, or on her brick stitch patterns and everything. So now what we want to do, make sure this is turning in the right way. Now she's trying to get in my closet. My goodness. Okay, so now we want to do, before I get off of here, we're going to add in our wire guard. So let's do our little turnaround. So we're going to go back through the bead that is on the left-hand side of that current row. Cosmo. And then we're going to go down the bead to the right. So we're going down the 2 D's and David B's. Then we're going to go through the bead that is on the right of that one, which is through the A as an apple. And this is where we're going to add our wire guard. Now I would suggest, since we're working with 11-0 Delicas, I would suggest to pinch this little portion, the open portion down at the bottom. Just put it between your fingers and you can pinch it in just a little bit. I usually like to do that. It just sits a little bit better on the earring whenever you pinch them down. If it's not working and you need a little bit more force, grab some flat nose pliers, or you can grab your chain nose pliers too, but I would just use down here a little bit further where it's a little bit bigger. And then just gently, not very harsh, but just gently put them in between your pliers like that, and then just push them closed. Because you don't want to do it too hard. If you do it too hard, you might close up the channels where the thread and the needle are going to be going through. So now we're going to go up one side of the wire guard, Again, if you don't want to use wire guards, it's fine. You don't have to. I just prefer to use them when I'm using thread and needle. And go down the other side of the wire guard. Then we're going to loop through that Delica. So it's that A. We're going to do this one more time. So go up the wire guard one more time. I like to put at least 2 thread paths through, just to help with stability and everything. Go down the other side. And continue through the bead that we were looping through, the little A. Now we need to get set up for our next row, and then I'll let you complete that row and then the second one. So we're coming out of this A over here, this one right here, and we need to be coming out of this A up here. So all you have to do is just move your thread and needle up to that one because it's sitting right next to it. So we're going to go up like that, and then now you're set up for your next row. So this one would be an A and a D that you would add on this row. And then we start it just like typical peyote. Oh wait, no, you have to do a decrease. Oh, I almost forgot. Sorry. I completely forgot about that. So we could have made that a little bit better down here. Okay. So if you forgot, just like I did, perfectly fine. Let's move our thread around. We need to be coming out of this D bead. D as in David. I completely forgot that we had a decrease on this row. So go down the D as in David, go down the E as in elephant, that's on the next row down, go up the D as in David, that is to the right, and then up the D as in David, which is the bead that we need to be coming out of. So there's that. Now we're going to do our decrease, which is an A and a D, and then we're going to start our brick stitch in the same fashion that we've been doing with the bee, the little bee that we made. And then when you pull that down, of course it's going to not work for me right now. There we go. It's going to look like that. So now we're going back to our typical brick stitch. So go ahead and complete this row, the row above it, and then I'll meet you back and I'll show you how to move your thread around to get to the large decrease that we're going to have to do when we get to the part of the honeycomb that's going to be up here, because we'll be this guy will be done, the top half of this guy will be done, but then we have to get over here to start moving around again. So go ahead and complete those 2 rows and I'll meet you back. Alright, once you get these 4 rows done, then your brick stitch should look something similar to this. I almost said peyote stitch, that's why I stopped there for a second. So now we need to get our thread and needle back over here, so that way we can complete this portion of the honeycomb. So this is where we're sitting at right now. So we've already gotten this part done. So this is the 4th row that we're doing. So now we need to move over so we can start doing our brick stitch in this little portion right here. Now the good thing about this earring, and I didn't plan it this way, it just worked out this way, that every time you have to do a large decrease like this, you're going to do the decrease in the same way. So we need to be coming out of this first D as in David bee, right over here, and going upwards. So to do that, we're just going to go back and forth through the beads off to the left. So go down the bead on the left, the next bead on the left, go up, which is an A, go down the last A that is on the left, and then you go up your D as in David on the left of that bead, and that sets you up to now where you can add your next row of peyote. So then just to start it off, it would be an A and a D as in David, and then you would do your brick stitch like you typically do. Go up underneath the bridge thread that is on the left of where your thread's coming out, and then make sure to complete the stitch. And there you go. So now that one is started. Then you complete the rows just the same way that you do with everything else. Now when you get done with this little portion, your beaded portion would look something similar to that when you are done. Of course, you can still see a couple of rows because I can't cover them all up with my hands. So that's how you're going to look at it in that way. Then you're going to have to go and put your needle onto the thread that you left your long tail with. And then just move your beads, or move your needle around until you're coming out of this bead, if I can get my needle through it. So that is the B bead, B as in boy, on that first row, which is actually part of the peyote stitch that we did. And then you would start doing your pattern on this side. So that's what you'll need to do on this part. If you need to, you can always look at the printed pattern that I have with that discount code. You can get 75% off of that. It's my in my Etsy shop, so 75% off that in my Etsy shop. And also, I almost forgot to mention that if you want to sign up for Adornable Elements, the Beads of the Month Club, which is where these beads are coming from, you can use a different discount code, so don't get those mixed up. This discount code, Dina10, is for Beads of the Month. If you use that code when you first sign up, you'll get a percentage off your first month, and then you'll start getting the similar beads that I get on a monthly basis, so you can follow along with my tutorials. So go ahead and finish up your little honeycomb portion, then get your bee out, and then we need to attach our bee to our honeycomb. So I'll meet you back in a second. So let's get our little bee on top of our honeycomb. So I've already got one attached over here, and as you can see, the little bee kind of moves around, kind of wiggles a little bit. So on the ear, it'll be kind of neat because sometimes the hair might hit it or something like that, and then it'll kind of wiggle around. So it's going to be kind of cute, I think. Alright, so you just need one more Delica out. I have just the black Delica. You can pretty much probably use whatever color you want to. I just chose to do the black. Now I want my earrings to actually be mirror images of each other, at least close. Now when I put the bee on top of here, it may end up going in that direction, it may go more like that, something like that, but at least it's going to be somewhat similar. So the honeycomb portion of it's going to be a mirror image. So that's why I have this one sitting in this direction. Now I attached my bee to the middle of the honeycomb here on one of the rows of 3. So I did it on this one right here. So all I did is I just went through that middle bead, which is the color C as in cat. So I just went through that one. And what we're going to end up doing is square stitching on that last Delica. So I'm going to leave just a little bit of thread left over because I have just, probably about 6 or 7, maybe 8 inches left or so left on the thread. So I'm going to leave just a little bit of a tail, 2 or 3 inches. Then we're going to square stitch on the black bead. So we're going to pick up the black bead, and then we're going to go back through that same Delica that our thread is coming out of right now in the same direction. So then that puts your Delica sitting like that on top of your honeycomb. Now we're going to go back through the Delica, the black one, because we need to get to a point to where now we're going to add our little bee. Now like I said, I want to try to get my bee to sit something similar to that. So at least the head of the bee is facing this direction of the honeycomb, similar to like over here. So to do that, I'm going to go to the back side of the bee, and then I think I used this first gold bead. So I'm going to go up that gold bead right here. So it probably doesn't matter which one, but I think this is what I did on the last one, so I'm going to try to do the same thing. And when you go through that bead, uh-oh, that bead's got a couple of thread pass through, it's kind of hard to get through it. Then you want to circle back around your black Delica that you have down here on your honeycomb. So notice how the thread is coming out of the left-hand side of the Delica right now. We want to go from the right to the left, just to make a little bit of a circle. And then you test it and see if that's where you want your bee to sit, and that's pretty close to being a mirror image of the other one. So I'm happy with that. Now you can go back through these beads a couple of times if you want to. I'm not going to show that just because it's going to be hard to be able to see that. So once you're happy with the amount of thread pass that you have through all of those beads, then it's time to tie off. And this is just going to be a simple right over left, left over right. So for me, I make a loop. The shorter end of the thread, I go through the loop towards me, pull it down tight, make a loop again, somehow, and then the loop, or the shorter portion of the thread goes through the loop away from me. And then just make sure you don't wrap around your bee or anything, and that the thread actually goes down to where the beads are at down here underneath your little bee that we made. Now this is the part that you may not be able to see too well, because I need to make sure that I get close enough to the bee or to the end of the thread without going through any of the thread bridges from the other beads. So hopefully I can get this to work to where you can see it. So just burn that off, and then burn your edges down. But like I said, you need to make sure that you're not going through any of the extra little thread pass. Like I got really close to one of the thread pass through that black bead that we just added, the black Delica, to put the bee on. And then now our little bee dude is now on our earring. So he's not going to be the exact same direction, you know, opposite wise and everything, but he's pretty close. So I'm liking it so far. So now we just need to open up our ear wire, and I'm just using simple little ear wires here. So I'm going to twist that portion open. Now sometimes you can just slide this on just like this. Sometimes it works that way. If it's not working, if your hole is too small to be able to fit the ball of your ear wire, just drop it through. When you drop it through like that, it will end up facing the corrected direction. And then twist it closed. And then after you get your second one done, you now have a pair of little honeycomb and bee earrings. I loved sharing this honeycomb and bee design with you. The pattern is now available in my Etsy shop, and you can use the exclusive 75% off code from this video for my YouTube viewers. Supporting the pattern helps me keep making new tutorials. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next video coming your way soon.